White supremacy, what's that thing? Kevin O'Leary said it yesterday with Tiffany on CNN. White supremacy? How dare you call ICE white supremacists? Fascism? Now, brown cow. Not fascism. Now, January 28th, 2026, all these people are using their august platforms. Folks, I'm talking to Brittany Packnett. Miss Packnetti, you must follow her on the social handle. BrittanyPacknett.com is how you go to her website and book her and hear her brilliance. And folks, I'm very excited that Brittany, much like Jason, who I just had on an hour ago, is wading into the Substack waters, and she is a bit further ahead than Jason, and she already has a Substack handle with a photo and a bio. So anyone who's watching, and we're going to be talking, and more people are going to come on. Subscribe to Brittany. And also, Brittany, tell them about what you're cooking up for Substack starting in Black History Month, the shortest month of the year.
Yes, the shortest month of the year. That people think that that's like a, some kind of scheme or whatever. But George Washington Carver picked the month with Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass's birthdays. That's why February is Black History Month. But anyway, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, to be able to kick off Black History Month with a bang and start my Substack. I'll be writing some open letters and notes to the people who need to hear from we the people through my Substack. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that going. And you can subscribe right now. I'm at Miss Packnetti on Substack as well. So thanks so much for having me.
And let me be even more blunt. And I was sharing with Brittany, and as I told Jason, the world's worst people, the world's most compromised people, the world's Vichy Democrats and institutionalists, the world's mediocrity, the world's centrists, and the world's institutionalists who are part of the big club, who said, Donald Trump isn't racist. Now, brown cow and black cow. Donald Trump isn't racist. White supremacy, what's that thing? Kevin O'Leary said it yesterday with Tiffany on CNN. White supremacy? How dare you call ICE white supremacists? Fascism? Now, brown cow. Not fascism. Now, January 28th, 2026, all these people are using their august platforms to literally 10 years later say what we were saying 10 years ago. And they will be paid. Yep. They will get all the exclusive contracts. Yep. They will get the books. Yep. They will feather their nest, and they will be elevated. And folks, I've been in this game a long time. The people who called it and were right will be elbowed by the same institutions and Democrats and be seen as crazy. Am I wrong, Brittany?
You're not wrong, because it's already happened. I distinctly remember 2016 DNC speaking on a panel, and I said that Donald Trump was trying to introduce a deepened and refined 21st century fascism into the American landscape. And there was an audible gasp in the audience. So much so that I stopped what I was saying, and I was like, did I say something wrong?
Wait a second.
I'm sorry, are we confused about what's happening? And I distinctly remember all the way back then, we were called everything but a child of God, right? And people said that we were sensationalists and that we were baiting people and that we were trying to cause chaos. When we talked about election integrity, people said that we were doing too much. When we talked about fascism and authoritarianism, people said we were doing too much. When we said he was coming for the entire Democratic project, people said we were doing too much. And here we are, hindsight being 2020. People are not now coming back and saying, oh, you were right. We should have listened to you in the first place. So let's listen to you now. People are saying, wow, look at this really nice white guy who finally figured out how to say abolish ICE after 10 years.
Yeah, let's elevate Brittany. Let's give her a column. Let's introduce her to the august intellectuals. No. Let's give a platform to this white dude who was wrong and use the past 10 years to mock and ridicule and punch down against the Brittnys and the Wadges. And let's elevate him and give him a raise. The cycle keeps repeating. And, you just said something that reminded me. I remember it was 2016. BBC NewsHour invited me. BBC NewsHour is that main show, right, that everyone watches.
Yeah.
And I was debating some Trumper, and I remember I said Donald Trump we're witnessing. I think I said you're witnessing the death rattle of white supremacy, and Donald Trump is a white supremacist candidate. And you should have seen the face of the host. He's like, he's like, what?
Short circuited.
No, short circuited. He goes, "What do you mean? What do you mean white supremacy?" So then I explained it, and I remember that clip went viral, and all the people of color in England were like, "That dude, that brown guy. Yep, he's right. He said white supremacy." But the thing was interesting. He wasn't trying to be cynical. His brain, Brittany, could not comprehend what I was talking about. He could not it was like Kevin O'Leary yesterday on Abby Phillips' show when Tiffany said that, some of these ICE members are white supremacists, and Kevin O'Leary had that faux outrage. How dare you? Can you talk to us about how, I've said on Left Hook, and hopefully you'll come back many times, I've said there's 3 enduring sins of America. 2 of them are white supremacy and capitalism. The third one I added is misogyny. These are the 3 enduring sins of America that America refuses to confront. We want to get to reconciliation without truth. And Donald Trump, I've always said, is as American as apple pie and slavery. When Biden says this is not who we are, I always took exception to that. I'm like, this is exactly who we are. There's a Statue of Liberty that welcomed my parents here that's been a refuge. And then there's always been a Donald Trump trying to grab her by the pee. And this failure, even now, as they're killing white people in the streets of Minnesota to acknowledge white supremacy. How do we get to reformation, Brittany, without confronting and naming the demon that keeps haunting all of us?
It's impossible to. You can't change what you don't name. And our American refusal to confront the past is exactly why we are so dead set on repeating it, and we're repeating it right now. I was literally on the phone with someone maybe an hour ago, trying to explain to them the connection between ICE and the kind of absolute horrific terror that we're seeing in Minnesota, but also Los Angeles and other places. I was trying to explain to them the deep connection between ICE and slave patrols and law enforcement in the Jim Crow era. We need to understand in America that all law enforcement, federal, local, state, prisons, jails, all of it are rotten fruit of the same poisonous tree. People want to say, oh, well, this is federal, but this was local, and this is... No. These are all rooted from the same place. And the place where they are most deeply rooted is in enslavement. So if you track back to slave patrols, you can see the very first layers of so much of what we're seeing ICE do now. So this idea that everyone needs to be walking around with their documents in order to prove that they should be where they are, that's what slave catchers did. They said so what would happen is enslaved people would, sometimes enslavers would allow enslaved people to go off of the plantation or off of the property, but they would have to have a pass. And so that documentation was something that they had to carry on them all the time. And law enforcement, slave patrols, slave catchers, they would come up and say, papers, please. Right? That's where the folks over in Nazi Germany got it from. We're who they studied, right? So this idea of documentation being required to prove that you are who you say you are and you are where you're allowed to be is deeply rooted in slave patrols. Stopping and questioning any Black person that you saw, whether they were free or enslaved, that kind of racial profiling, that is deeply rooted in slave patrols and in slave catching, and that's exactly what we're seeing in ICE right now. And then I think most importantly, the use of utter and extreme violence to force compliance out of people, right? This is rooted in enslavement. This is rooted not just during the antebellum South, but directly after enslavement, right? Where so many Black people are now free, but a Southern aristocracy and oligarchy is still trying to control their movements and therefore trying to keep control of their economy. So when you move from enslavement enslavement to emancipation to Reconstruction. Reconstruction only lasts about 13, 14 years, right? It is very, very quick. This idea that Black people are finally being allowed to engage in our full citizenship, that we can vote, that we can run for office, that we can own land, that we can do all of these things. We're supposed to have a window for that. This window gets shorter and shorter and shorter until it is violently abutted by this thing called Jim Crow. A lot of people think Jim Crow is only the 1950s and 60s and whenever you get black and white footage of Rosa Parks and Dr. King. No. Jim Crow is the thing that answers Reconstruction. It is the thing that ends Reconstruction in the late 1870s. And then you're seeing not only an abundance of the same kind of engagement that I just talked about, but now these slave patrollers have become police departments, right?
Yep.
These are directly linked. The same folks who were catching slaves, now that they can't catch slaves technically, are doing so under different laws and different auspices. And so moving into Jim Crow, we see the engagement of these same kind of tactics. And what we have to understand is that there was barely anything called immigration enforcement in America at this time. But when it starts to emerge in the late 1800s, around the same time that Jim Crow is becoming the law of the land, it is local police departments and state governments that are enforcing immigration between each state, right? So the same tactics that the slave catchers are using are the same tactics that these new police departments are using, are the same tactics that these new kind of disparate immigration enforcement agencies at the state level are enacting. And that is how you get to what you see now. That is how we get to seeing people being shot on the street. That is how we get to be seeing people be pulled out of their cars and their documentation being questioned. Raids, right? These kind of raids of these all Black spaces to see if those people were free or enslaved and if they were allowed to be there. Those same kind of raids are the ones that we're seeing now by ICE. None of this is new. It has been visited upon Black people and Indigenous people in this country for a long time. We know it's been visited upon our neighbors across the globe. And I think it's critically important that we actually learn the proper history so that we can correct for the future. Let me just add one more thing, because I think a lot of people miss this. Border Patrol in America is invented in 1924. This is around the same era that the Ku Klux Klan starts to be repopularized as an extrajudicial arm, right, of America to enforce racial codes and racial hierarchies through terror and violence. The same people who are staffing Border Patrol, running Border Patrol, writing the regulations for Border Patrol, they're the Klan members. These are direct connections. And we keep missing these pieces. So then somebody can come along and say, this is not the America I know. But for folks like us, this is the only America that us and our ancestors have ever known. And here we are.
Amen. Amen. The only thing I was what I was just gonna add was when you mentioned the timing and how it connects to immigration. During the deliberate failure, the hijacking of Reconstruction, which then was replaced by Jim Crow, our first immigration law, folks, I always want to remind people because it's all connected. 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act.
That's right.
The same tactics that were used against Black people were then used against Chinese folks. There was lynchings, there was violence, there was mobs. They will outbreed us. They're a fifth column, right? So that you have the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. As Brittany was saying, all right, well, Black people are free now, but now you got Jim Crow. Now you have an entire system, as she describes, especially in the South, where it was rigged. Police were rigged. Judiciary was rigged. Local, state, federal officers were rigged. City council was rigged. Jury was rigged, right? It was all their bros and even their women.
Yep.
Oh, everyone has seen you lynch and kill and kidnap and torture and mutilate that Black person. I didn't see it. Acquitted, right? Speaking about KKK, because I think I always try to bring this pop cultural reference in, the power of stories in media. Whenever Brittany, people ask me like, if you can name 5 movies if an alien comes in, a little alien comes from outer space and says, give me 5 movies to explain the human, condition of America. One of the 5 movies I would give is Birth of a Nation. Birth of a Nation came out in 1915, directed by D.W. Griffith. It was like Avatar of its day. It was based upon 2 white nationalist tracts written by Thomas Dixon, a 3-hour epic. This movie shows, and the parallels are so amazing.
Yeah.
Because of slavery and Reconstruction. Do you know who the real victim was? It wasn't the black folks. It was the poor white man. And the black people took over the city halls and city councils. And the white man felt threatened. And you know what these blacks wanted? I'm not making this up. Fried chicken and white women. And so the poor white men at the end of this movie, the only way to save their white women and their culture and their civilization was to rise atop of the horses, don the hoods, and be knights. The Birth of a Nation, that movie was such a blockbuster that Woodrow Wilson screened it in the White House.
Yep.
That movie single-handedly reignited and repopularized the KKK, which then flourished, like Brittany said, in the 20s. And how this is connected to immigration and ICE, folks. In 1924, as Brittany was talking about, there was the Immigration Act, which placed these restrictive quotas that literally America said, Asians, you're not coming. Latinos, you're not coming.
Yeah.
Southern Europeans, you're not white. Italians, you're not white. Eastern European Jews, you're not white. And then 1965, you get the Immigration Nationality Act, which then allows my family to come, literally removes the restrictive quotas. And people, I always try to connect the dots. The 1965 Immigration Nationality Act would have never happened without the Civil Rights Movement.
Yep.
On the back of the Civil Rights Movement, Democrats, cowardly Democrats, were forced to say, shit. We got to get rid of these quotas. Yeah, we're stuck. How can we say, all right, you blacks, you get your freedom, but you others, you can't come to America? And Stephen Miller says the worst thing that happened to America was the Immigration Nationality Act of 1965. 70% of the immigrants who came were were brown and Asian. The browning of America, more doctors, more scientists, more entrepreneurs, more brilliant people. America got richer. And Stephen Miller says that's the worst thing. It's intersects with our immigration enforcement system going back to the 20s. And Jessica Zwang, who's my friend who came on yesterday, exactly what you said, Brittany, she took it back. She's an immigration rights attorney. You said the Nazis were so enamored by Jim Crow. Nazis were also enamored by how Jim Crow intersected with the criminalization of immigrants, the eugenicists who helped inspire immigration enforcement were awarded by the Nazi regime in the 30s.
Yep.
Brittany, sorry, that was my rant.
No. Don't apologize. Rant meets rant, because these are the histories that people are missing, right? And besides Stephen Miller being an insult to good looks, he's also so clearly trying to architect a reversal, right? The again in Make America Great Again is the part that I always remind people to look at. We always say, well, when was America great? For us, it never was. We got bits and pieces here and there, right? There were freedoms that we experienced temporarily. There was progress that our foremothers and forefathers fought for that we experienced temporarily. The again is for them. The again is for the folks who want to go back to Reagan's America when he first said, make America great again, right? And who want to go back to the part that he was hearkening toward. But when the quotas existed, right? If there was an act at all, right? When the ability for Black and brown and indigenous people to move freely was severely restricted to the benefit of the state, right? That is what the again means. So these rants are important because people aren't getting them from their textbooks. People aren't getting them from their college degrees. Unfortunately, too many of the children were left behind, and lots of people need the history that you just gave.
And also, folks, it doesn't end. So we're looking at the 60s. We look at the assassination of MLK, the assassination of Evers, the assassination of Martin Luther, of Malcolm X. We're looking at the dog whistles that then replace the N-word, as Lee Atwater, a famous Republican strategist, said we can't say the N-word anymore. So we got to go with dog whistles. We got to go with welfare queen. We got to go with busing. We got to go with the so racist that even Roger Stone said that's too racist. 1988, Dukakis. It was 1988 Willie Horton campaign. Then you have all this is connected, right? So then we get to the war on terror, Brittany. We get the war on terror, and 19 foreign hijackers bring down the two towers. America loses its mind and decides the war on terror was a choice. We will create DHS, and we will create ICE, and we will create the Patriot Act, and we will go after the drug smugglers, the terrorists, and we will make America safe. Now, I'm much older than you. Look at the gray hair. I was marching as a college student. And what we said, and so many others allies said, is this will be a disaster. You will not have democracy bloom.
That's right.
Extremism will flourish. You're going against innocent communities in Afghanistan and Iraq. You will cause terror and mayhem. Fast forward 20 years, Taliban is back in power. But what you're doing at a local level is you are creating a loaded gun.
Mhm.
You're giving an unchecked, unfettered power to the executive who, oh, I don't know if he or she is racist or authoritarian, will then take this loaded gun. And let's be
Yep.
blunt, Brittany. America was fine using this loaded gun against Latinos,
Mhm.
brown and black people, indigenous people, Yemenis, Somalis,
Yep.
Afghans, Iraqis. And we
Yep.
kept saying, I know our lives don't matter. This gun can be used against you. ICE can be used against you.
Yeah.
And they said, now, brown cow, I would rather feel safe than
Yeah.
be free. I
Yeah.
am fine with CBP and ICE and DHS cracking brown and black skulls.
Because it's not
That's
coming over
okay.
here. Mm-hmm.
And so, can you talk to us now? Let's take it to the war, post-war on terror before we get to Minnesota.
Yeah. You know, I refer to this all the time. If folks haven't read The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee, it is an absolutely critical read, especially right now. But I always draw upon her drained pool politics illustration. She talks about mid 20th century, the proliferation of these gleaming, bright Olympic-sized pools that get put into neighborhoods all across America as free resources. Recreation in the summertime, a place for children to learn how to swim, to learn teamwork, to learn, all of the camaraderie, all of those kind of things. But those pools are mostly segregated. And you are hard pressed to find any of those pools in operation now because they all got drained. Why did they all get drained? Because during the civil rights movement, when Black folks and people of color in this country demanded that public spaces be integrated, there were so many white people who said, I would rather have no pool than to swim next to Black people, that I would rather you drain the entire thing. And it's such a critical illustration to help us understand how white supremacy, both as a system and a culture, right? So the system is the pool is segregated. The culture is I don't want my child swimming next to Black children. As a system and a culture, white supremacy harms white people too. Yep. None of us are free under this system and this culture. And it should not have taken Renee Good and Alex Preddy being executed in broad daylight in the middle of residential neighborhoods on camera for people to understand that. Because at the end of the day, a system that requires violence to keep itself afloat is willing to turn that violence on anybody who gets in its way. And that is what we are dealing with now. That is most certainly why there are people who thought ICE was keeping them safe from the bad other folks post 9/11, not realizing until this last week that those guns would easily turn on them and the worship of those guns would be detrimental to them as well. I think, unfortunately, we've continued to see that, though, especially when I think about gun culture and school shootings, right? When I think about Sandy Hook, when I think about what happened, when I think about Florida, right? There are so many instances where white children, white women, white men, white people were considered what I'm losing the word right now.
Disposable.
Yes. They were completely expendable, right? And that it was just the cost of doing business in order to uphold white supremacist systems and culture. That thing sucks the life out of all of us. We're all living in neighborhoods with no free pools. We're all living in neighborhoods that at any point in time can be taken over by armed paramilitary poorly trained people who think that they're playing Call of Duty on us, right? Who want to call Renee Good an effing bitch, who want to cheer after Alex Preddy gets murdered, who don't even want to call the name of Keith Porter Jr., who don't even want to call the names of the dozens of people who have died in ICE detention because most of those people are Latino or they're African or they're South Asian or Haitian, and nobody wants to talk about them. So here we are in this place where a lot of people are waking up to the fact that they weren't free either. And that can be a really hard pill to swallow, but we can't waste time waiting on folks to deal with their shock and awe, because right now is the time that we have to protect ourselves and one another and actually build the world that we deserve while we're fighting back the world that's fighting us.
No, I appreciate you gave that Heather example. It's one that me and Danielle always bring up on Democracy-ish. And it's another one that I've shared, and also Jonathan Metzl has shared in his book Dying of Whiteness, in which he literally did the research and revealed that white people would literally choose death over voting for Obama or supporting Obamacare. And the racism has, he did a study. Their white supremacy erased about an average of 6 to 8 years off their life.
That's right.
And the analogy that I've always given that Jonathan agrees with is, if given a choice between sharing a huge palace with me and Brittany or burning down the palace, they have elected to burn down the village. And what other more beautiful example of that self-immolation than the re-election of Donald Trump? Even the emergence of Donald Trump, right? You got Obama, he could never be angry. Obama, who had to drink, always try to bring receipts. Henry Louis Gates Jr., a colleague of mine, we're on the board for the Before Columbus Foundation. Black man, as prestigious as you can get, has won all the awards. Harvard. He made the mistake of trying to get into his own home. The crime of a black man trying to get in his own home, a police officer said, hey, black man, why are you trying to get into this nice home? He goes, this is my home. He says, no, it isn't.
Summit.
Arrested him, and then Obama had to have a beer with the white police officer, and Henry Louis Gates Jr. had to sit there and smile to the
white
camera.
Police officer who was on par with either one of them. Yes.
And Henry was like, yes, awesome. Thank you for arresting me for getting my own home, right? I just want you all to remember that. Then this country said, we elected a black man, and Michelle Obama and her black toned arms and these two black girls to go into the White House? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no. White rage. We're going to elect the most unqualified, racist, rapist vulgarian who spearheaded the racist, Islamophobic birther conspiracy. I just want people to think with this. Then you had a choice. This unqualified, racist piece of shit who incited a violent insurrection, I rarely swear, forgive me, I have a whole bunch of kids here, was so bad. And then you have a choice, Kamala Harris. We can't have a black Indian woman. We're going to go for this racist piece of shit who lied to us about COVID, killed a million Americans died, folks, and was corrupt as F, incited an insurrection. And oh, by the way, through Project 2025, like the world's most helpful Bond villain, he has told us he will unleash ICE and the National Guard against the American people.
The plan was right there.
And you know what? That's okay, because they're going to go after those trans. And you know what? They're going after the pro-Palestinian activists. Who cares about Mahmoud Khalil? Who cares about Rameza Ostrich, who gets arrested, detained, kidnapped for writing an op-ed? I'm not Palestinian. I'm not a pro-Palestinian activist. Who cares about Kilmar Abrego Garcia and the 230 brown people who had tattoos? That's not me. And like you said, Brittany, if you allow your government to do this to one group, that means your government will do it to you. And fascism in America, and even abroad, has always been tested against the most marginalized. In America, it's always black people, Native Americans, and you could get away with the Native Americans and black people, immigrants.
That's right.
And then what we're seeing now is, folks, let's just be honest. This was just a year ago. Mahmoud Khalil, Democrats were quiet, Brittany. Rameza Ostrich, Democrats were quiet. And I always try to bring receipts. Kilmar Abrego Garcia and 230 plus men were kidnapped and being tortured in CCOT. There was one senator who went, and I give him props, Chris Van Hollen. He was the only senator who went. And he said, I'm not going to leave until I get proof of life. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was in the news. Eventually, he comes out. And now you fast forward 1 year later, ICE is killing white people in the streets. Where were the Democrats and the centrists? Where was the outrage, Brittany, a year ago?
Well, now, even with the outrage that we're then seeing folks say, well, we don't want to abolish ICE. We just want to not give it any more money. Well, we shouldn't abolish ICE. They should just wear body cameras, as if killing people on camera has stopped them before. Oh, we don't want to abolish ICE. Let's just move the money around. Let's just train them better, i.e. give them more money to go and wreak even more havoc. The truth is, we don't have an opposition party. We have a different party.
No.
And I'm I and so many others are growing so weary because if you're not going to be a fighter, then get out of the way. And it's not to say that there are not fighters in the Democratic Party, but those people are not getting the support that they deserve. When I think about the number of people who in 2020, when George Floyd was killed and Breonna Taylor was killed and so many people were murdered, they came out, they bought all the t-shirts and the tote bags and the buttons and they said, listen to Black women.
Well, Nancy
And then when
Pelosi
it came,
kneeled in the Kente cloth.
and then when it came time to elect a Black woman
Mm.
who would have not done what we're seeing right now, people said, absolutely not. Now, was I requiring people to agree with everything that she believed in? No, I don't agree with any politician all the time. But I think it's clear that there was a discernible difference between that woman and the person that's in office right now. But they chose the person that's in office right now. And then those same people have the nerve to get online and say, well, where is she? You didn't give her the job. So she's not at the office. Please explain to me how this is supposed to go forward. And now we're seeing the same kind of self-fulfilling prophecy around a woman is unelectable, a Black woman is unelectable with Jasmine Crockett. Now everybody is saying you can't elect a woman or a Black woman statewide in Texas. Meanwhile, Stanford and others have done the research. Those kind of self-fulfilling prophecies specifically hurt women. When people say that women candidates can't win, they don't. And it directly causes a decrease in effort, a decrease in funding, a decrease in support. And so now we're seeing the same thing happen. And here is Jasmine Crockett being one of the folks who's saying, I want to go see Liam because they transferred he and his father to Texas.
The
So
5-year-old
I'm
boy.
going in. Yes, the 5-year-old boy. So I'm going in there, right? We see her saying one of the first people to say Kristi Noem needs to be impeached. So we've got a fighter in the party, but because the fighters in the party embarrass the centrists in the party, the centrists do everything that they can to keep the fighters quiet. And like America is sick of it. The whole point of a representative democracy or republic or whatever we got now is that we elect people to go and represent and fight for us. But if you hamstring the people who are fighting for us, then what are we left with? We're left to fight out for ourselves. And so then you've got Democratic platforms pushing out like they are news services and telling us what is happening instead of what they're going to do about it because they've forgotten their requirement to be the opposition party. If you're not going to be helpful, then please get out of the way. And I would much rather the party, any party, working families party, whatever party, having the fighters out front who are going to actually represent us in the ways that are necessary in this time. It is not 1985. It is not even 1965. It is 2026. The people know what's going on, and we're sick of it. We're sick of it.
It's not even 2025, folks. It's 2026. You got white people out on the streets pissed off. You got white self-proclaimed conservatives who voted for Trump saying, I'm sick of this shit. This government's lying to us. They're killing white people and Black people in the street. You even got white support. You have all the polls. You have this moment, me and Jason went back and forth on this, and he said, I'm not for persuasion. I'm for prioritizing. You can prioritize. Republicans do it all the time. Greenland's the most important issue. No, now it's Venezuela. No, now it's Somalis. No, now it's Haitians, right? Lead, prioritize. All
That's
the
right.
polls are on your back. You got the plurality of Americans for the first time saying abolish ICE. You got white people
That's right.
saying abolish ICE. You got Donald Trump on his back foot. Negative double digits on immigration, negative double digits on the economy, negative 30 points on the Epstein files, weak cankles, dying. Stephen Miller right now is throwing Kristi Noem under the bus. Kristi Noem is throwing Stephen Miller under the bus. And still, they don't do offense. They're playing prevent defense. And my take on this, Brittany, and folks, everything Brittany said, you've heard on the left hook. I swear to God, we didn't compare notes. Listen to Brittany, she's smarter than me. You haven't heard me we haven't talked for a while, but this is where I'm at. I'm done with centrists. If you're a centrist, you're complicit. I call them Vichy Democrats. I keep the receipts. Going back to your point, we don't even have to go back to the 2024 election. I saw what you did against Zoran Mamdani. I saw what you did against a brown Muslim man.
That's right.
We saw what you did against him. Even now he's so popular, you still want to kneecap him. You still don't embrace him. You still say, shut up, Democrats. It's either us or Trump. you're going to vote for us. And 18 million Democrats in 2024 said, nah, you still embrace Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah.
You still fund Israel's genocide. You refuse to tax the billionaires. You have the wind behind your back. You have
Yeah.
a generational moment. And Senator Schumer right now is saying, we're not going to say abolish ICE. We're going to say reform ICE. I'm not making this up. Brittany wasn't making this
I
up.
know.
Amy Klobuchar a couple of days ago said,
Who is
we're
running
gonna
for governor of
tell
Minnesota?
We're going to tell ICE to get out of the state so you can go kill white people in New Jersey. What the F are you talking about? Then we heard last week, Brittany, hey, now, we need centrists. Would you rather have a Cuellar in Texas or Republican? Would you rather have a Klusenkamp or Republican? Would you rather have a Suozzi or Republican? Would you rather have a Manchin or Republican? We
I'd
need
rather have
them.
people with vision and courage, right? I would rather people not set the bar so low
It's like this.
that's the only occasion we rise to, right? And I'm going to answer this real quick because I see the comments. Jasmine Crockett does not take money from AIPAC. And it's very important, not only that we correct that, but that we also ask ourselves why that is being pushed against her in particular when her and her Democratic opponent in the primary have essentially the same position on this, okay? And you can disagree with that position, but they're basically the same, but one story is getting told about one person and another. That's
Because
a
Talarico
sidebar.
is the white because he is the white.
I wanted to correct that because we can't let this disinformation persist. But to your point,
White.
but I got asked because I'm on a podcast that I think drops today or tomorrow. I don't even know what day it is, to be honest with you. And I got asked like what I hope for, what I dream about, and I was like, what I pray about is the thing that sounds impossible, right? Like that level of world building and freedom owning that ensures full freedom for my children, right? For your children. A world that does not stamp on their genius and look on them as threats, right? But a world that fully embraces their humanity and knows that it is made better and richer because of it. Like that's actually what I dream about. And people can tell me that's Pollyannish, that's utopian, whatever. But what I'm clear about as a former public school teacher is that I will rise to whatever bar I set. So if I don't set the bar all the way up at the moon, I'm not going to make efforts that try to reach that. I'm going to do middling things. I'm going to do incremental things. I'm going to settle for the best I can get right now instead of keep reaching and searching and doing for more. And this place, if we don't say abolish ICE, then we're not even going to get reform ICE, right? If all we say is reform ICE, we're not going to get anything. There is something to the people who we are setting the expectations as high as humanly possible for the folks that we elect to get it done. And I don't care who your candidate is, what party you're a part of. If you say I'm not a Democrat, I'm a progressive, I'm not a progressive, I'm a leftist, I'm not a leftist, I'm a socialist, I'm not a socialist, I'm a democratic socialist. At the end of the day, all of us have the role of citizen, and the people who are in office now and the people who seek to be in office need to be committed to the bar that we set. And if you are not willing to have the courage and the vision to reach that bar, then step aside. I'm not here to tell Texas who they should vote for. I'm not here to tell California who they should vote for. I am here to remind that those of us who occupy the office of citizen deserve to hold the highest bar as possible, not just for a little bit better, but for freedom, not just for reform, for abolition, not just for get out of our state, but for get out of our lives.
She's saying what I've been saying, but she's saying it better and she's smarter. So listen to Brittany if you don't listen to me. I'm picking up everything you're putting down. And what you're saying, what I hear is you want fighters. At least fight for it. And
That's
I
right.
give a sports analogy. It's sports season. My team right now is beleaguered, the 49ers, Warriors. At the end of the
I'm so
day,
sorry.
yeah, they're injured. It's painful. But you know what? When the 49ers played the Eagles, right? I said, you know what? There's no chance of us winning this game. And they won. Just try. When your team tries, Brittany, when they fight, what happens? Brand loyalty, pride. At least try. Go for the flea flicker, right? Try to return you go for the blitz. Democrats who are the white moderates that MLK wrote about in 1963. That's
Yeah.
Chuck Schumer. That's all of them, folks.
Yeah.
We've talked about a lot on this show. They tell you can't even dream it, Brittany.
Yeah.
They truncate our dreams. What do you mean, universal childcare? You can't even say it out loud. You can't even say, you can't even think it.
Yeah.
We won't fight for anything. Meanwhile, and I give Republicans this one credit, and only for this,
That's the
when
only
they get when they get power, they don't give an F. They flex. They're like, stop me. I want Venezuela. Stop me. I'm going to steal the oil and then sell the oil and put it in a Qatar bank account. I'm going to openly tell you, Marco Rubio is going to admit it today. What you going to do about it? I'm going to unleash the National Guard and the military against the American people. I said it last October. I did it. Stop me, mother effers. I'm going to give the biggest tax cut to billionaires and the greatest wealth transfer theft in history. What I'm going to nominate a crank RFK who's going to kill our kids, and I'm going to go up with them and you know, I'm not even going to repeat the lies about Tylenol and kill moms. What you going to do about it? Democrats are like, I'm going to punch myself in the face. Thank you so much. But if Democrats were on the 1 yard line and they had to do a quarterback sneak, this is what they're doing right now, folks. They would run backwards into the opposite end zone. And with Democrats like these, Brittany, I see you're at the point you're saying I'm tired. I'm done. I've seen this my entire life. I've been hijacked by the establishment. They've lied to us. They refuse to change. They're not built for this fight. They're not made for this moment. I saw it with Ron Mamdani. I saw it when they caved during the government shutdown. It was the centrists. I saw it when they caved for Biden's progressive economic bill. It was Sinema and Manchin who killed it. I saw it when they said the banks are too big to fail. I saw it right now this week with ICE. I'm seeing it right now, like you said, restore ICE, repair ICE, train ICE. You can't train it. It's a vicious dog. It's doing exactly what it was trained to do. You have to put the dog down humanely. Don't hurt animals. But you know what I mean. Yes. But this cannot be reformed, and they still don't fight, Brittany. You have a layup. You have all the polls. Mamdani, even if you disagree with them, smart politics, folks. This is what I'm telling you. Just
that's right.
Look at the evidence. Politics.
And set the bar high, and is doing everything he can do to meet it. That childcare came through.
His approval rating. And they still haven't embraced it. So you explain it to me, Brittany. If you have a guy who is beloved, who brings out people, a new coalition, wins by nearly double-digit points, despite your own party, doing everything to bring in a sex predator to beat him, and after he gets elected, his popularity goes up, and you still haven't embraced him, what does that say about the party, Brittany?
That says that the party is determined to stay stuck. And I think one of the things I try to explain to people is that I watched this happen in real time, as did you. I would say around 2014, 2015. The cultural zeitgeist in terms of people's not just understanding of politics, but people's demand on what politics can accomplish sped up by light speed. So if it was moving at this kind of incremental pace, come 2016, people were like, no, we need to move much faster. I liken it to our attitude around body cameras. In 2014, reasonable people all across the way were like, body cameras make sense. By 2016, people were like, well, we threw money at that problem. The body cameras didn't do anything. They kept on killing. The police kept on killing people. So actually, just get rid of them. Just get rid of them. By 2020, the defund movement is taking hold in places that people never would have imagined. And so between 2014 and 2020, I think that there is a group of politicians who thought that the politics of 2014 were going to cut it, who thought that the politics of 2008 were going to cut it, right? And like, actually, no, this thing moved much faster than you all expected it to. And instead of playing catch up, you keep trying to drag us back to what you're comfortable with, right? So you're trying to drag us back to a world in which Democrats won a plurality of white people, a majority of white people, and that hasn't happened in literal decades. So you keep on writing op-eds where you're telling us the party is too woke, y'all pay too much attention to trans issues, they pay too much attention to black people, y'all pay too much attention to Palestine, even though they didn't go nearly as far in any of those issues as we wanted them, right? there are people who said, I can't win in this environment. It passed me by. So I'd rather drag you back to where I was a winner than be okay hanging up my hat and passing it on to the next generation. This is not unique to the Democratic Party,
Yeah.
but it is still a problem. And for me, it says that people are more concerned with their job security than they are with the fate of their constituents. And if you're not concerned with the latter, then it's most definitely time to get out of office.
I want to ask you two final questions, and based on exactly what you said, this is nothing new, and bringing it back full circle, this is structural. And MLK talked about this, talked about the white moderates who would prefer a civility in order to
That's right.
justice, right? Instead of transformation, restoration. This isn't who we are. Let's go back to the good old days. Let's go back to, and I would say these modern Democrats and the corporate consultants would love neoliberalism Clinton and first term Bush, right? But we're living in 2026, and this is the frustration that you can read in MLK's letter as he was in the jail, right? The white moderate, he said, is the bigger stumbling block to progress than the white citizen counselor. For those who don't know, the white citizen counselor was the more refined version of the KKK.
Of the Ku Klux Klan, yes.
They thought the KKK was too uncouth, so they had the suit and tie. And he said,
or the same KKK members just took off the hood and went to the White Citizens Council meeting. Yes.
Yeah. They're like, oh no, not us.
Right.
And he said they're the greater stumbling block. And so Black folks in particular, Brittany, and one of my final two questions for you, have been dealing this not just forever, but like in the 60s with George Floyd, with the wokeness. They have been at the center and the forefront. For those who are watching right now, and those who are on the streets, and those who are waking up, especially in Minnesota, the lessons from your own activism and your communities of what America can do at this moment for grassroots change to push back against a system of cowardice, racism, and complicity.
Yeah. So the first thing that we need to do is embrace community and reject power hoarding and individualism. And I teach about these things all the time because they are discernible elements of white supremacy culture. Thinking about culture like a smog that we all breathe in, we've all learned this idea of individualism in Western culture and white supremacy culture. We've all learned this idea of power hoarding, that power is pie and that there's only so much to go around, instead of the ideas of community and collectivism that say, actually, we can grow a bigger apple tree, we can pass around the products, and we can bake more pie. Or actually, power is not pie at all because that's something somebody else gives to me, and rather power is inherent and abundant. And when we share our power, we're all more powerful together, right? Embracing these ideas of understanding that we are truly stronger together, and understanding that the talents and gifts that all of us have need to be brought together, not from our personal storehouses, but to the middle so that we can all benefit. That's the first paradigm shift that we all really have to embrace. That is what we're, on the positive front, that is what we are seeing in Minnesota. That is part of the reason why it's important to recognize that even before 2020, Indigenous communities in Minnesota, Black communities in Minnesota, immigrant communities in Minnesota, they were engaging in the kind of collectivism that is now part and parcel with the activism that we're seeing. So when people are around passing around whistle kits to make sure that when ICE is on the street, everybody can make their neighbors aware, that's an act of community. That's an act of collectivism. When people are going to the grocery store for one another so that they can support those folks who can't come out of their house because they're hiding from ICE, that is an act of collectivism. An act of collectivism that we can all do right now is reach out to the office of Governor Tim Walz and tell him and demand a statewide eviction moratorium, because there are so many people who have been who've been sheltering in place at home and unable to work because they don't want to be picked up by ICE, that they may not be able to make their rent. That charge is being led by both the St. Paul and Minneapolis city councils. They both approved a resolution in support of this, and it's in particular being led by the Democratic Socialist minority leader, Robin Wansley, a Black woman who is doing really powerful work in pushing toward this eviction moratorium. So that's a way that we we all right now can stand up for our family and our neighbors in Minnesota, call Tim Walz, email Tim Walz, tag Tim Walz, let him know that there needs to be a statewide eviction moratorium. That is an act of collectivism. So the first thing we need to do is take actions that are inspired by and rooted in power sharing and in community. The second thing we need to do is we need to actually look to the blueprints that are set. We need to stop people when they say this is Nazi Germany and say, no, this is slave catching. This is Jim Crow. This is the Chinese Exclusion Act. This is how America has perpetually treated the other in this country. And the people who have been treated that way have already set the blueprints for how to resist. When we externalize this and make this the thing Germany did, we do two things. One, we act like it's never happened here before and that nobody here knows how to resist instead of embracing and supporting and following the people that have. And two, we let ourselves off the hook because you know what Germany did? They taught themselves better. They learned their history. They didn't put up a bunch of Third Reich statues like we put up Confederate statues, right? They didn't popularize the swastika like we repopularized the Confederate flag and Leonard Skinner was singing in front of that mug, right? Like
And naming
we
schools after losers and traitors.
and lame schools after. No, instead, what Germany did was in those schools teach those young people, every single one, what happened so that they would never repeat that shameful chapter of their history, right? So, like, let's not let ourselves off the hook and act like we're them because we're not even close to acknowledging the history that has already happened in this country, let alone what's happening right now. So we need to understand the history, the true history, the full history, and the blueprints that have been laid by Black, Indigenous, and immigrant people in this country. I think the third thing that we need to do really intentionally is follow those folks who have been successfully pushing on that blueprint. I am constantly pointing people to the work of Maurice Mitchell and the Working Families Party, right? When we talk about
Fantastic.
Mamdani, when
Yes.
we talk about Summer Lee, when we talk about Ayanna Pressley, when we talk about state legislatures, when we talk about mayors, all the way up to the federal government, they have been successfully running progressive candidates who have not just been talking a good game, but they've been following through on the things that they have been talking about. And their work has been deeply collective. It has been deeply multiracial. It has been deeply multi-faith. And it has been deeply thoughtful about how they are sharing power with everyday working people. Everybody's like, well, we need to build a third party. The Working Families Party is right there. You can become a full dues paying member. You can sign up for their newsletters. You can attend their mass calls. They are one of the organizations that has been a part of the No Kings movement. So you can be attending those marches and those trainings, etc. The last thing I would say is to get trained and start right where you are.
Local.
There is no reason why all of us should not be looking at Minnesota and readying ourselves for if, when, or if it is already in our backyard.
Yep.
It would be unwise of all of us to think that that is their problem over there. They're coming for all of us.
Yep.
And so you, at the very least, should have the names and phone numbers and necessary information of your direct three, the person living across from you, the person living to the left of you, and the person living to the right of you. If you cannot get in touch with those people, if chaos comes, then that's exactly where you need to start, right? Then make sure that you're connected with the folks in your neighborhood. There might be an email listserv or a Facebook group or a Signal chat going on. Make sure that you are engaged. Have a plan for when these things come. Have a plan for who's going to go get the groceries, who's going to shovel the sidewalks, who's going to make sure that that people's bills are paid, or if they need rental assistance, all of those kinds of things. The folks who have the privilege enough to be safe going outside need to be figuring out how they are protecting the people who need to stay inside. That is the kind of work that we should be doing right now. And there are so many trainings going on virtually and across the country to make sure that people are doing that and figuring out how to be together while we try to survive this assault. And if we learn how to be together now, we can be together in the world that we're trying to build together.
Fantastic. That was awesome. We should make a clip of that and send it. I want to ask you one final question of the 2 minutes I have left, but I do want to repeat that Working Families Party, Maurice Mitchell, folks who are watching The Left Hook, please search The Left Hook. I had them on. They don't really go with parties, but they go after candidates and they choose
Right.
specific candidates and they uplift them. One of them being this guy called Mamdani, who's the mayor. Speaking about solidarity and reaching out, I just want you all to know this came out today. A lot lot of poor white people are getting really, really, really mad at Trump because everything's expensive, and low-income white voters are turning on Trump. Second Amendment voters are turning on Trump, and also a lot of
My
white folks
God.
in Minnesota. So these are the cracks. You build local coalition. Brittany also said local. We've always said it here: start local, start local, start local. That's how you empower. Fascists come for everyone. Eventually, they come for fellow fascists. ICE is coming for everyone unless we stop them.
That's right.
And then I do want to ask you this final comment, because I'm going to talk to Danielle about it in 2 minutes. But Ilhan Omar, our sister Ilhan Omar,
Yes, our
who has
sister.
been thrown under the bus. I'm going to be blunt. Thrown under the bus by the Democratic Party. I've interviewed her recently. I interviewed her a few years ago. Chuck Schumer's rarely to never come to her defense. The Democratic Party has mocked and ridiculed, even recently, Rashida Tlaib. Censored Rashida Tlaib, did not censor Randy Fine for his Islamophobic comments, not Tommy Tuberville. In the last week, folks, you probably wouldn't know this. Last night, Ilhan Omar got attacked by a freak, a nut,
That's
a
right.
right-wing freak, and more they're coming out today, more and more this guy who attacked her. The most complete glimpse into the life of the radicalization of Anthony Mirzak yesterday, the man who rushed Ilhan Omar, and Ilhan Omar, like a boss, went after him. He got radicalized in real time by following all these right-wing freaks that we're supposed to make bread with. Got radicalized. Look at his tweets. Look at his social media protests, right? So Ilhan Omar, thank God she's fine. He gets up, throws something in her face.
Yeah.
She's so tough. Unlike these
She
weak-ass
don't
white
play.
MAGA
Our
guys,
sister does not play.
she's like, give me 5 minutes. I'll be back. Continued it. Another individual who got attacked at Sundance, Maxwell Frost.
Maxwell Frost. Yeah.
And the last question I want to ask you about this, Brittany, if this were two white MAGA dudes, if this was Sarah Huckabee Sanders and her eyeshadow was mocked by a white comedian, we would hear about it nonstop. If this was Charlie Kirk, how come we haven't heard about Ilhan Omar and Maxwell Frost?
So, two things. One, I keep seeing in the comments, am I running for office? No, I am not running for office, but my good friend Cori Bush is, from our hometown of St. Louis. She's running once again for her seat, to take it back from somebody who is truly not progressive. So if you want to support me, I'm asking you to go and support should-be Congresswoman once again, Cori Bush. She absolutely needs our support because she stood on business for us in so many of the ways. To your question, we're not hearing about for Congressman Frost. We're not hearing about Congresswoman Omar, very simply because their colleagues aren't forcing the conversation. So we need to. If this happened to, if any of this happened to a member of the GOP, not only would they come after the person who made the attack, they would be coming after every single person that they deemed woke or on the left for creating a hostile environment. Because one of the things that you do in Darvo, one of the things that you do in authoritarianism is you accuse the other side of that of which you were guilty, right? That is that's like propaganda 101. So you are creating an unhealthy and toxic environment in which people can exist, but you don't say that you are. You accuse the other side of doing that. So they'd be saying, if this happened in reverse, they'd be saying that we fostered an environment that created this kind of hatred. When the truth of the matter is, when the chickens come home to roost for the kind of environment that they created, and people like Congresswoman Omar and Congressman Frost are being attacked, and people are being kidnapped and abducted and disappeared off the streets, and Alex Preddy and Keith Porter Jr. And Renee Good are killed, and dozens of people are dying in detention or being thrown out in sub-zero temperatures out of Whipple Immigration Detention Facility with no medical attention and being reportedly disappeared into the woods. When all of those things happen, not only are they not willing to take accountability for the environment that they created to make all those things happen, we're not pressing the issue. We need to press the issue constantly. This is due to their words, their radicalization, their videos, their red pilling, the podcast bros, the folks who use gaming as a portal for those things, the tradwives, the people who've used everything from TikTok dance trends, beauty trends to try to push conservatism and these right-wing agendas. All of this has been coming for everyday Americans who are dejected and don't know any better. We need to pull those that we love above who've been convinced by that out of the trenches and out of that fire. And we need to make sure that we call the truth out for what it is. We have to get ahead of their lies and ensure that they are held to account for the type of environment that they created that is literally killing people.
And folks, exactly to Brittany's point, the paper trail is there. The man who tried to attack or threw that whatever that was on her, Andy Kazmierzak, Turning Point USA chapter at the University of Minnesota, follows him. It's all there. He's part of the ideological infrastructure, and it goes
Yep.
all the way to the top that Donald Trump yesterday couldn't even bother to say anything about it. He goes, I don't care about her. I don't think about her. He's obsessed with her. He's tweeting about her. He's tweeting against her. And folks, if you haven't followed in right-wing media, even though we have the video, they're lying to our faces and now saying it's all staged. It's all staged.
Yeah.
So folks, go on offense, because if they could, this is what I say. If they're doing this to Ilhan Omar and the entire establishment is willing to throw her to the wolves, and they're willing to throw Rashida Tlaib to the wolves, and I don't care if you agree with them or not, but this has happened. They have a target on their back from the president of the United States, and these women still go and fight. If they're willing to do that, and Chuck Schumer doesn't have their back, does he have your back? Does he have your back? That's what I want you to think about. Thank you, Brittany. It was fantastic. I kept you longer than I thought. My excellent co-host, Danielle Moody, will be on. She says hello to you for Democracy-ish in a second. Shamelessly promote yourself, please, before you leave.
You can find me at Miss Packnett across social media. My Substack hopefully will be launching next month, also at Miss Packnett. And you can find more of my work at BrittanyPacknett.com. And I'm so grateful to you for sharing the space, for lifting up these things, and for all the work that you're constantly doing.
Thank you so much, and we're looking forward, folks. Anyone who follows me right now, Brittany has her Substack handle. From that handle, she will now populate her Substack page. So everyone, around 2,000 people were watching, and the people who watch this later on YouTube, and once we post this later tonight, go subscribe right now to Brittany, and then in next week, she's going to launch tasty stuff, and she's been at the forefront of it. Listen to her. Listen to her instead of some overly paid corporate hacks in the New York Times at the Atlantic. Thank you all. Brittany, I'll let you leave. Thank you, everyone.
Soon.
Take care.
Thanks,
Thank you so much. Folks, I'm about to bring Danielle on in a second. For those who missed me, this is Brittany Packnett. She's been at the forefront. She's a former educator, still an educator, but has been organizing part of, but not exclusively, a BLM, dropped a lot of gems. And folks, this is The Left Hook. Forgive me for what I have to do right before I bring on Danielle, but this is, I got to do it. I'm trying to get better. You have to subscribe to thelefthook.substack.com. Folks, I have a special on for 3 days. It's it's the January special. It's 25% off. I'm putting it up right now. It is, click here for discount. This is what happens. Give me a second. I'll figure it out. It's thelefthook.substack.com /special. And that's where it's at. I hope you guys could. There you go. I'm going to put it up right now. Hold on. Boom. Sorry. Sorry, B Mouse in my life is watching Watch. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I'm a workaholic. I just stay on all the time. It's leftook.substack.com /special. It's $3.75 forever. For 3 more days, I have this special if you can. And Danielle Moody is coming on in 1 second. There's 2,000 people. Literally, give me 30 seconds. Danielle's coming back. And I really want to talk about Ilhan Omar and Maxwell for us because the party has abandoned her. Donald Trump has a target on her. She's one of the people who's fighting for abolish ICE. If they're willing to abandon brown people, black people, and their own elected officials from their own party, what will they do to you, folks? Full court press. Be back in a minute.